Hey guys, welcome back to Stuff. This week I am building some floating shelves in my spare room which look a bit like this. If you want to see how I did those, stick around and I'll walk you through it. And remember to like and subscribe, and yeah, let's get on with it. So the wall where I'm fitting my floating shelves is in my spare room. You can see it in this picture. It's about 3.6 meters long. It's quite a long wall, a lot of space to be covered, and I'm going to be putting up quite a lot of shelves because my partner has a lot of books. You can see the wall still needs a coat of paint. That's because I didn't want to put the shelves up and scratch all the new paint and then have to retouch it up. So I just thought I'd do the shelf putting up and then give it a coat of paint afterwards. So that's why it's in that condition. First job that I did was to check what was level and what was not. In my case, the ceiling was not level, so I took all of my measurements from the floor. So you can see in this sketch that I've put together that the ceiling exaggerated was sort of dipped down in the middle and then back up again. So it's just a sort of tip to make sure that you take your measurements for your shelves from a common datum point, either use a laser level or in my case, measure up the floor. The construction I used for the floating shelves was to build a carcass first and then clad in 5mm plywood. I bought all of the stuff at my local B&Q. I got all of the plywood ripped down in advance to the width of the shelves, which is good because they've got a really nice saw and it rips it really well. Saves me doing it at home. However, if you look at this set of sketches, you can see that my wall was a bit jaunty, being that it's an old house. Why wouldn't it be? So I didn't check this before I bought the wood, but what it meant was that when I offered up the shelf to the wall, so you can see with the dotted line on the sketch, that I then had the shelf or the wall bearing away from the shelf. So I had to both pack out the carcass, and then after I'd offered the plywood up, I had to fill in quite a large gap behind the shelf with decorator's caulk. But yeah, so just make sure that you check that beforehand. The other option would have been to scribe it. There are plenty of videos online around scribing to wonky walls. I've even done one in the past if you want to have a look. But in general, I'm glad I did it the way that I did it and filled in afterwards, because the amount of plywood that I was using scribing each individual shelf to the wall to try and get it flush rather than just fill later, that would have taken me so much time. So yeah, pre-cut was the right answer for me. As mentioned, there was a lot of shelves I was putting up. So the first job for me was to cut all of my carcassing wood down into the bits that I would need. So there were some long bits and then some off stands, I guess, which were much smaller. So I cut those down with a chop saw until I had lots and lots of small noggins. And then I used just some normal wood screws to connect all the noggins to the shelves to start the carcass. Once all those were connected together, I didn't really measure them really. I just put one at either end and then split the difference in the middle to make sure that there was an equal amount of noggins on each run. I could then offer up those sort of half carcasses up onto the wall where I'd measured earlier, and then drill those into the wall and use some raw plugs and some screws to connect them. I had to take them down again afterwards because I forgot I needed to put some wood in the sort of recess that I've got there. So you might not have this on your wall if you attempt this, but I tried to make the shelf match the wall, so I didn't have a massive gap behind where the recess was. So I put some bracing in there as well. After all those were fitted in position, I could then put the fronts on. So this was a case of just offering up the long lengths of wood that made up the front of the shelf and then screwing them to the other end of the noggins that was sticking out. The plywood I was using was 5mm plywood. I had to cut that by hand because it doesn't fit on my chop saw, and then I could offer that up and use a cheap nail gun to stick it down. I'd recommend not getting this one from Titan by at Screwfix, because it didn't really cope well in certain areas. If you didn't get it exactly upright or hold it down enough, the nails didn't go in, which was a pain later because I had to go back around with a hammer and a punch. So yeah, definitely don't buy this Titan nail gun. Get a better one if you're going to use it. With all the tops and bottoms nailed down, I could then go about putting the front faces on. Because I didn't want any sort of nails or wood filler or anything showing on the front, I used just some standard wood glue and used some tape just to hold those in position while they dried. I did that across the entire length of all of the shelves. Once they were dry, I could fill in any sort of nail holes in the tops and give everything a sand back. One thing I would say is be careful if you're using 5mm ply, especially cheap ply, because you can rub off the top layer and it will give you some nasty looks. But luckily mine was going to be covered by books, so in those areas where that happened, I'm not too bothered. Once all the shelves had had a good sanding, made sure I got rid of all of the wood filler and made sure all the edges were flush. I gave everything 3 coats of my wood stain, which was the top coat that I was going for. Obviously you could paint this, but the wood stain was the look we were going for in the room. Once that had dried, I gave everything a denib in between, and then it was just time for my partner to fill it up with her books. So we have it. That was some floating shelves in my spare room. I'm really pleased with the way that they turned out. I think it looked great. It was a lot of meters to put on the wall, but we got there in the end. And yeah, final product I am delighted with. So yeah, remember, you stay safe, get some stuff done.